This is Willaca Spring, and the spring head itself is right over here in the corner. Now, when William and John Bartram first visited this, William did not revisit any of these springs along the way, which is indicative of the impression that it made on him. He went straight for Salt Springs. He just kind of he brushed aside. They were not in significance in comparison to those other springs. These were apparently not much to speak of. We're established outside the perimeter of the palisade, probably on a pretty consistent basis, because when they would come to trade with the store, there were no hotels, and, so they would set up encampments around the outside of the palisade that was surrounded this Spalding's lower store. Okay. And they found the bases of the palisades that were sunk, so they could, And just beyond that white car, there's an open field, and that's where the lower store was actually located, the structure. But the entire this area was part of that, because it was within the palisade. That protected the store and the buildings. But this is where William Bartram spent most of his time when he wasn't actually traveling, and this is where his base of headquarters. He had a room here at McClatchy's place, and did a lot of his artwork. And this, of course, is the site where he famous killing of the rattlesnake and other things. And he also, when he went down to and visited the Seminole village in Palatka, he mentioned seeing a village in Palatka when he was coming up the river to Denny's Rolls place at Rollstown. In the report, that village was not before Rollstown, but in fact was after Rollstown. It was after he cleared Rollstown and he started to come up to the lower store that he passes a Seminole village, and that's in the report. Now, the report was drafted 9 years prior to the let's see, 90. It was drafted in 74, and he didn't write travels until it wasn't published till 91. Probably 10, 15 years later. Yeah.
I got.
But when he was here at Spalding's lower store, one of the last things that he did before he headed back up north was that he was invited to an Indian festival at the Seminole village. So they trekked by land. They made the trip down to where the site of Palatka is now, and he describes how far they went in travels, about the distance that was walked in. So that's probably the correct site for Palatka, and that's where we kind of lay claim to the ravine gardens, although no mention is made of the ravine gardens and the ravine that was ravine gardens, which frankly I think that if he had encountered, I can't imagine that it would have escaped some note, because it's a pretty unique land feature. But nonetheless, he doesn't ever write about it. So did he actually visit the ravine? Probably not. But if he was following the river, between the river and the ravines is a pretty nice swath of land that would have been.
He almost got there.
Yeah, that you would have crossed without ever really seeing the ravine itself. You would cross the run of White Spring, which is there in the ravines, and you would have gone across that, but you wouldn't necessarily have encountered the ravines themselves. So the likelihood is that Palatka was the site of the Seminole village, and so it's described. So he did visit that, but he didn't go down by boat on that occasion. He went by land.
Very interesting.
It does give you a good indication of what the expanse of Spalding's lower store was. Not just the store, but there was a surrounding area. And William Bartram, and both he and John Bartram in their writings, describes the location of the store and what's going on, the activity and all that's going on. And you say, oh man, absolutely, you are. William Bartram was sitting right over there. John Bartram was standing right there. This is it.